everybody. So we're recording the second episode of Retales. We are super excited today to have Mr. Saurabh Bajaj as a part of this episode. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us in today.
My pleasure, yeah. Looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think just to start off with, I will just quickly introduce myself and then I will hand it over to you. So I'm Zarif Hussain, co-founder and CEO of Retail Pulse. It's a pleasure to be talking to you today. And so I think we can begin with a quick intro about yourself and then we can get into the rest of the podcast episode.
Sure. I currently manage marketing for Britannia's dairy portfolio, right? I have an experience of around 16 odd years in the FMCG industry. I've done my engineering from Delhi College of Engineering and then, MBA from IIM Indore. And I've had a chance to work across companies like Mondelez, Diageo, and now with Britannia. So I decided to make my choices when I was a young kid and I was just learning in my career into chocolates. Yeah, because
Yeah,
kids like nothing better than chocolates, right?
yeah,
And as I matured in my career, I moved on to a more mature indulgence, which is alcohol, right?
yeah.
And now with Britannia, I'm just getting my detox. Yeah, and now I'm seeking more nourishment in my, in my more mature stint, right?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. So I'd love to kind of dig into one thing that keeps going on in my mind when we think about marketing, which is today we have a lot of different cases where one word defines a brand, one word defines a product in our lives. So like today when we say search, we're going to think of Google, or when we say e-commerce in India, most people think of Amazon or Flipkart, for example. Um, as a marketeer creating categories in the FMCG world, where is the king. Could you take us through an experience of yours where you've been a part of that journey or you've seen that journey firsthand, where you defined a brand, defined a product that is defined by one word, and it became a part of the culture?
Now, what I've learned, over the last few years is that in order to really create a beautiful brand or really create that impact in a consumer's life where he really values you, right? You have to take the pains to sort of understand the consumer's motivations, right? To
Yeah,
understand society, to understand culture, to understand what's going on, right? One such opportunity that I had is when I was managing the mandate for Cadbury celebrations. Yeah.
yeah,
Now, Cadbury celebrations is almost synonymous with package gifting in the country. While a lot of other brands like even Britannia, Real, Kurkure all have gift packs, but if you were to ask somebody what is a package gift during Diwali, most probably the answer is likely to be Cadbury celebrations,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And how did that happen? So the journey, of course, of Cadbury celebrations predates my existence on the scene. I only took on the brand in 2008, and the brand had existed all the way from 1999. But what I faced when I came onto the brand was a very interesting set of challenges. So when I took on the brand, what I realized is that in the early years of the brand, just growing awareness was leading to growth. Yeah. Then somewhere in the mid 2000s, there was a campaign with Amitabh Bachchan. Yeah, and that made awareness almost 100%. Right, everybody knew about the brand,
yeah,
and again the growth stagnated. Right. So when I went there to ask consumers as to why aren't you buying more of Cadbury celebrations, and the simple
yeah,
question was, I didn't think about it. Right now, I didn't think about it is a very difficult question for a marketer to solve. I mean, if you
yeah,
said that I do not remember you, I didn't see you, I can solve for that,
yeah,
right? If you said that I don't think your packaging is great, I can solve for that. But how does one solve for I didn't think about you, right? And to solve for I didn't think about you, we said that we must get into what the spirit of Diwali is all about. Yeah. And case study, which was a bit of an inspiration for us, was the Coke Santa Claus example, where globally Coke has managed to own the spirit of Christmas by the
yeah,
creation of this, jolly character of Saint Nicholas, right, or Santa Claus as I and you know him. Yeah. Now, what we wanted to do was no less ambitious, right? So we said that we really must understand Diwali, and we not only went to the top towns of a Bombay, Delhi, but we also went to the tier B cities like a Bareilly or a Rajkot. Yeah? And what we found was astounding. In the metros where I and you live, right? We don't really know our neighbors anymore. We don't really care about them.
Yeah.
we might, I had this running joke with my wife, where towards New Year's I would tell her, make some friends next to the lift so we have somewhere to party on New Year's night, and it would be as transaction as that, we will get to know them, celebrate, party, and then go back to our own life. We won't really
Yeah.
care whether we are, building a bond or not. Yeah, because we
Yeah.
just didn't feel we had the time or the energy to invest in creation of these relationships.
Yeah.
But when I went down to Bareilly, right, and I still get goosebumps when I think about that incident, right, where I had this tenant and landlord staying in the same bungalow, and the tenant mentioned that he and his landlord's child have been going to school together for the last 8 years, right, and nobody in school knows that they're not brothers, right?
Yeah.
Everybody thinks that they've been going to school together, they share the food, they share the lunches, and it's a very different relationship, right? And I
Yeah.
realized that that kind of warmth does not exist in the metros anymore, right? And why shouldn't Diwali be an opportunity to remind people to take a happiness break? Why shouldn't Diwali be a time to tell people, why don't you genuinely go out there and make somebody happy, right? And that's what led to the genesis of तो इस दिवाली आप किसे खुश करोगे? And I believe that we really hit upon a very meaningful festival inside, which is to say that this Diwali, don't just pick up the phone and call a few people, instead go out there, enter their hearts and minds, spend some time, reignite some old relationships. Yeah. And I think it was that kind of a campaign which made Cadbury celebrations really the most thoughtful gift out there.
Yeah.
More synonymous with Diwali than any other gifting brand has managed to do in the country so far.
I remember last time we were catching up, you were mentioning about another such thing, right? Like one of your famous LinkedIn posts, right, was about the depiction of Santa Claus, and you actually just mentioned it, where before like the 1930s, before Coca-Cola actually defined what Santa Claus looks like, Santa Claus is depicted in a bunch of different ways. But I grew up knowing Santa Claus as that, big, jovial, bearded man, and like he's giving you gifts and stuff, right? And but that depiction of Santa Claus was kind of architected and defined by Coca-Cola, which I didn't know that. That's pretty crazy to think about. So it's defining an occasion, it's owning an occasion. I think that's what you were going after. That's the same kind of concept with which you're going after Diwali. Coca-Cola or beverages in general, and the place that it has in India today. You were mentioning about that Thanda Matlab Coca-Cola campaign. And I'm curious to know, like, how significant was that campaign? Because today, when you talk about soft drinks, you talk about Coke, Pepsi, and that's what you go after. But was it always like this? And do you have any experiences, or can you share some stories where you have seen sort of, something that has really created these beverages, these brands as, the normal go-to drink in this country?
Yeah, it goes back to my time when I was in college, right? And I was quite fortunate to do my summer training with Coca-Cola, right? And this was back in 2003, right? Interestingly, that was the time when Thanda Matlab Coca-Cola was all the rage, yeah. And I happened to
Yeah.
witness the complete madness in Bhubaneswar, right? In Orissa. It
Yeah.
was like a battleground market for them because both Coke and Pepsi had recently come in that marketplace. Yeah. Now,
Yeah.
the day that I landed for my summer training, yeah, I decided to go out for a jog. Yeah. And I went out there and met a retailer,
Yeah.
and I immediately realized that there is something really weird here, right? Because having just joined Coke and early in the morning, but yet I couldn't, resist myself from ordering a bottle of Coke. Yeah. And at $5, he gave me a bottle of Coke and a 2 rupee sachet of Sunfill. Sunfill was something like a rasna which they had introduced. So I was like, wow, what's going on? I mean, if you remove the cost of Sunfill, it's like a Coke for $3. I mean, what are we even talking about here? And
Yeah. Yeah.
for me, the perception of Coke is very different because, I grew up in the 90s when Coke was really not available in the country. The Coke had to leave India for almost a decade, right? And when they came back, we were all very excited because, we have had Thumbs Up and Limca and Gold Spot. But the fun of having a Coke as this almighty global brand was something which is very fascinating for
Yeah.
us, And it feels impossible for anybody to believe a time when Coke was not available in the country, right? But yeah, that time
Yeah.
did exist. And I
Yeah.
still remember when we got those bottles of Coke from my defense canteen. I could see that nice green glimmer on the bottle, and I was quite fascinated by it. But it was always this exotic global kind of a brand, right? Not something that I would have on a day-to-day basis. So if I'm going out for dinner with family, yeah, I can order a Coke then, but it is not something that I could just do just for the sake of it.
Yeah.
But Thanda Matlab Coca-Cola and the entire piece changed all that, right? And they changed all that because they fundamentally attacked it on two different levers, right? The first lever was emotion of the consumer, which is what they did with Thanda Matlab Coca-Cola. But there was also the physical affordability aspect of it. See, Coke and Pepsi and all other drinks, including Thumbs Up, were only available in a 300 ml bottle. So for the
Yeah.
first time in 2003, 2004, at least that's what I recall, Coke managed to import in these bottles of 200 ml from, I think, Nepal, right? Or Bhutan. So when they came from that side of the border, because those facilities were not available in the country, right? It suddenly exploded the market because they had a 5 rupees bottle of your favorite beverage or this favorite global brand, yeah, available at an arm's reach, right? Followed by a campaign which says Thanda Matlab Coca-Cola, which essentially says whenever you are reaching out for a refresher, yeah, don't think about a buttermilk, don't think about a banta, which is something that we used to have in the small towns of the country quite famously. Yeah, don't think about a juice from a juice wala on the side. Just reach out to a Coke because we quench your thirst. We are everybody's favorite Thanda, right? And I think they did
Yeah.
a brilliant job of not just category growth. I would say categories explosion at that time, right?
Yeah.
With both the low price product as well as the relevant emotional proposition.
And I've heard some crazy stories from, the cola wars of Pepsi and Coke. And an example that I know is, there was a meeting going on at the Coca-Cola headquarters, and outside there was a big glass window, right? So you could look outside the window, and there was a window cleaner who was coming to clean the window. He was just like scraping the window and making sure it was clean. Um, all of a sudden, everybody in the room kind of closes their books, all the files that they have. They just kind of close it, and they seriously look at each other and say, "Is that guy from Pepsi?" Right? But this is
Right.
reality. This is true. This is a true story, and they're not joking. That's how serious these cola wars get. So, do you know? Did you have any experience from that time where you saw some things like this?
Now, what I observed during this time, right, was again the sheer degree of agility and sheer degree of madness. So, we had both Coke and Pepsi just about setting their feet into the Bhubaneswar market, right, on the Orissa market, which is a relatively nascent ground for them. Both they had their offers at 8 rupees, yeah, and suddenly you have Coke coming in importing these 200 ml bottles, right, selling their offers at $5, right, and Pepsi says hell with it, I'm not losing my share. So they said take the 300 ml for $5, right, which is
Yeah,
crazy in itself, yeah.
yeah,
And what does Coke do? They said, we're not one to be left behind. So take the 200 ml back at $5, take a 2 rupees Sunfill on top of that, right? Which is
yeah,
mad, right? So you actually had, the product retailing at $3 in the market, which is, as good as giving it away free at some level. So which is
yeah,
what was the monstrosity which is going on. To make
yeah,
things even more exciting, right? Both of them had taken on this aggressive outdoor campaign where they were placing hoardings in each other's offices, almost trying to shake the morale of the other person's troops, right?
yeah,
And then
yeah.
you had Coke and Pepsi frontline people picking up each other's glass so that they could not replace it. And they would have these, war-like situations with two Coke and Pepsi trucks coming from opposite side, exchanging the glass because, what will you do with the other person's glass finally, right?
Yeah.
But what added to the wildfire was this entire stupendous growth because you suddenly had an insane amount of demand, right? And both the companies just didn't have the factories to manage that demand, right?
Yeah.
Because finally you invest in the glass at one go, the entire glass gets refilled, rewashed, and reshipped every 24 hours. So
Yeah.
it's crazy the kind of supply chain that is required to do all of that, right? And on top of that, such an explosion of demand. So we would have situations where distributors are like virtually sitting on the table with a whole stock of
Yeah.
inventory behind them, like smugglers, right? And you would have
Yeah.
retailers lining up in these long lines, from the VRs of the morning with cash in hand, saying that
Yeah.
what I'm giving you cash up front, just give me stock, right? And you had
Yeah.
you had consumers picking up a whole rack at a time. I mean, what are you going to do with a rack of colas, right? But it is just that
Yeah.
the consumer is like, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. This is not going to happen ever again. Let me just make the most
Yeah.
of it. But it
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
amazing. I mean, it was, I think, these kind of crazy movements which redefine how categories are perceived in a country. But it
Yeah.
was really, really exciting to observe it, from front face lens.
Yeah. So that's that's a pretty iconic time, which you got to witness right from the ground, right from actually being there, where the rubber hits the road, where the action happens, and that's amazing. In my first experience, was actually interesting. My first, role ever was with PepsiCo's first snacks franchise in the world. So in that experience, I remember everything was a complete uphill battle because here you are trying to deal with the retailers, deal with the distributors, and making sure you're establishing new brands and new products that consumers are also trying for the first time. It's crazy, but going from where we were exactly that first few months of that business, where it was an uphill battle, it's amazing to see that once you've cracked the right value proposition, the right pricing, and the right communication as well, how things can just skyrocket and almost go out of control. But here we are, talking about Coke, talking about one of the biggest brands out there, talking about Coke versus Pepsi, these huge campaigns. But I'm curious to dig a bit deeper into a portion of your career where you were leading innovation for Diageo. And here you were leading innovation for a product that is not allowed to have these big campaigns.
Wonderful. Yeah, I agree, and I think everyone must do a stint in alcohol, not just because the product is so nice to drink, but really from how you can have a completely different kind of learnings, right? And
Yeah,
what I learned in alcohol was fundamentally very exciting about the fact that when it comes to regular consumer good products, right, there is something that we call the brand health pyramid. Yeah, and the
yeah,
brand health pyramid is really a pyramid in reverse, right? So the top base of this is awareness, right? You first create a large amount of awareness. You have some section of that which tries it. There's a further smaller section which repeats it, and some of them become your advocates. So your most often used brand
yeah,
is the narrowest part of the pyramid, right? And
yeah,
your most often used brand part of the pyramid is what almost translates finally into your market share. So if you want
yeah,
to have a market share of say 5% or 7%, you will have to establish an awareness of 70 to 80%, and that's how
yeah,
most consumer good categories operate, right?
yeah, yeah,
But alcohol is the reverse of that. So they actually have a reverse pyramid, right? You got to start with the advocates. So you got to start with make by those guys who will be brand lovers, who's gonna be really spreading the right word of mouth regarding your product, right? Then you have a small cohort of users which really love this product. They will then spread the product to a lot of other people because each alcohol gathering is not a single person ever, right? It's always a mix of 10 or 20 products, right? 10 or 20 people. And those 10 or 20 people, again, if they really enjoy that experience or those stories associated, will make it larger and larger. So you start with the reverse part of the pyramid, right? And
yeah,
and hence the magic of alcohol marketing is about making those moments of consumption epic. And if you can make those moments of consumption epic, that's when you start making cult and epic brands, right?
yeah.
Now the interesting thing is that alcohol is a category which has got zero functional benefits. I'm sorry to break the heart of your users. I wish we could say that alcohol is great for my body and which is why I have it. No, it is bull. It has got no functional benefit whatsoever. Right? It is purely ethanol, C2H5OH. You can find some good quality ethanol in hand sanitizers. I would advise don't drink them. But yeah, that's all there is, right? It's not a product with any
Yeah,
functional benefit whatsoever, right?
yeah,
All of the benefits associated with alcohol are emotional. And hence,
yeah,
all of the benefits of alcohol are really about those myths, legends, and stories. The myths that are created, right? Now, in working with this brand called Captain Morgan Dark Rum, which is launched and relaunched multiple times in the country, but yet I think it's a brand which is a tricky one to get the mix right. Yeah, but they have a very fabulous way of running this brand globally. Yeah, and that's where the learnings come from. It comes from the US market. It all comes around the cult which has been associated with Captain Morgan himself, which is a legendary character of history, right?
Yeah.
Which is created in the form of a real life icon, a real life actor who dons the entire hat of the captain, has got that magnetic and gregarious personality, who's fun, and they create that evening into a legendary gathering. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it is the magnetism of the brand and how beautifully that brand and the entire growth model has been crafted, that it is eminently replicable across markets, right? And that
Yeah.
character is so infectious that it becomes something that people love. So I
Yeah.
think my experiences with Captain Morgan Dark Rum was really fabulous in terms of how alcohol marketing really happens and how you essentially create brands in an otherwise dark category.
No, thank you so much for that. And thank you so much for a wonderful conversation so far. It's amazing to just hear the stories that I mean, that's why we named this podcast Retails, right? Because we believe that those who have uh, been involved or are veterans today of the consumer goods industry, there's a vast amount of stories and instances and experiences that are so unique and that have gone behind creating moments, products, and occasions that we kind of take as granted as a part of a culture or as a part of life. But the amount of thought and the work that went behind that, and what it was when all of these different brands and products were being established is super unique. So thank you so much, Mr. Saurabh Bajaj. As we bring this episode of Retails to a close, we're going to end on a very fun and exciting note. We're going to do a rapid fire round. So let's see where this takes us. So, all right, here we go. Ready. What's a habit that you picked up during lockdown that you will continue?
So one of the habits that I picked up during lockdown is to put up my LinkedIn posts. I think I'm going to continue that.
Nice. Are you a morning person or a night person?
Definitely a night person.
What's the first thing you do in the morning, though?
I check my messages here, unfortunately. I guess we all do that.
If you had to give up either your phone or your laptop forever, which one would it be?
Well, I think definitely be my laptop. I'll ask my boss to do my work.
What what do you do to de-stress?
So I frankly love my glass of scotch and my writing, buds start flowing then. So I typically have a scotch and then I plan the next article that I want to write.
Great. What is your secret vice?
Scotch.
Okay. What advice would you give to your 18-year-old self looking back?
So I think the key advice that I would say is that continue to be imaginative and dream as large as possible, because I think the only thing that one is limited by is the power of your dreams. So dream more, achieve more.
Amazing. What book do you feel is a must read?
So there's this lovely book called The Strength Finder. I think that's a book and a online test which everybody must do. It gives you a really good insight about who you are and what are you really strong at.
Who has been the greatest influence on you in your life and why?
So Stephen Hawking, I mean, I just love his, never die attitude. So while he passed away a few years back, but I think he was really my biggest inspiration about the fact that life is limitless as long as you decide to remove your constraints.
What is your biggest distraction during your workday?
Castle Crusher.
and and what are three words of advice that you would give someone just starting off on their career?
You are limitless. I think as long as we embrace the fact that you can and be truly limitless, I think you'll be all that you want to be and more.
Awesome. So that wraps up our rapid fire round, and it wraps up the second episode of Retails here with Mr. Saurabh Bajaj. Just want to thank you on behalf of Retails. Thank you so much for coming on this podcast, giving us your deep insights, you're telling us your stories from your vast experience across a multitude of different subcategories within the consumer goods space, sub industries within the consumer goods space. And we've really, really enjoyed talking to you. I'm sure everybody out there watching is going to learn a lot from you, and it's super exciting to have this opportunity to speak to you about your experiences. Thank you so much once again for coming on board, and I look forward to catching up with you, hopefully in person, sometime soon.
Thank you so much, Zarif. I think it's a great initiative that you've taken. I would say, all the very best for your journey, and it's indeed been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you so very much.